All right. Let me get.
Have you ever worried that you might be the cool kid you wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends? Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream, always so generic, more normal than your friends? Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can sleep easy after all that you've heard, 'cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. Tyler, Phil, and Boris. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all in Canon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mando Monday. It's Monday. It's Mando Monday, the last Mando Monday of the year, and what an episode it is that we're going to be discussing as we talk all things Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 8, Chapter 16. It's time, guys. It's so much fun. As always, I am your host. I'm Boris, and this week, I'm joined by Phil.
Hello, everybody. How you doing out there?
And Tyler.
Hey.
And like we do every week, we have a different guest to discuss, to partake in Mando Monday, and this week is no different, as we're joined by the entertainment editor at GameSpot, half of the Wrestle Buddies podcast, none other than Chris Hayner.
Hello! Wow, what a 38 minutes of television we're gonna break down.
I know, that's why I love 38 minutes. It's gonna take us 90 minutes to do so, but you know, it's why not?
Love it.
All right,
it never ceases to amaze me how we can deconstruct an episode that normally takes others 10 minutes on the internet.
Yeah.
Also, eternally grateful this is not an hour-long television show because everything would take so much longer at midnight on a Thursday night.
Yes.
True enough.
Gosh.
Oh yeah. I can't even imagine. So, Chris, before we get started, how about you tell our listeners a little about yourself, what you do at GameSpot, what Wrestle Buddies podcast is, and yeah, floor is yours.
Okay, so yeah, I write over at GameSpot, the place where people go to read about video games. I do the writing about TV and movies and theme parks and other nerdy. I believe it's everything that gamers like is the through line. But I've been writing about. I've been an entertainment reporter for 8 years now, and I just keep going. Wrestle Buddies is a podcast that myself and entertainment news editor Matt Elfring launched earlier this year. Wow, this year has been very long.
Yes.
Where, unlike most wrestling podcasts, we're the opposite of timely. We mostly talk about things that happened 20 years ago that we were enjoyed as children, for better or worse. And I don't know if you guys have ever revisited old wrestling stuff. It's mostly worse.
Yeah.
But
So,
man, we love it.
I just recently launched a NXT podcast on another network on Sunday Night's Main Event Radio, and every once in a while we have a from the vault. We've already had 2. We're going into our 3rd, and it's a lot of fun because it's a lot of nostalgia hits. But when you actually look at the wrestling, this and everything else, like the presentation, it's so bad. It's so good.
I mean, everyone wants to forget about the fact that, like during a WCW main event, Sting was broken out of a cage literally by RoboCop.
Yep.
That happened.
Yep.
And that was pro wrestling in the 90s at one point.
Yep.
So
between that and Abdullah the Butcher getting electrocuted, it's just we have some gold.
Oh my god. Honestly, seeing that on YouTube years after it happened put me down the rabbit hole of being like, wait, Abdullah the Butcher has a barbecue restaurant now?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's hilarious. A few weeks ago, we actually revisited what's it called? The No Holds Barred, the movie, the match.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Oh my god. What a
Yeah.
oh jeez. What a fantastic era. Not to be confused, of course, with Ready to Rumble, the movie, the match. WCW's weird triple-decker cage match in which David Arquette was champion.
exactly. But you know what? This spawned the greatest, I guess, comeback in all of wrestling history with David Arquette. His everything he's
True.
done the past couple of years has been pretty much amazing. The fact that he's wanted to do hardcore matches, the fact that
Ooh.
he's put in the work. He's won a lot of
Oh,
people over.
yeah.
Although
He is retroactively paid his dues in really fun ways.
yeah, exactly, and a lot of the work that he's been doing and is doing with RJ City is just hilarious. And you know, if you don't respect David Arquette as a wrestler, then you just have no idea what's going on. And if you can watch his documentary, it's so good. It is so much fun.
He just loves it so much.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like that is someone who
his love is just so pure. It makes you smile and you're like, wow, he really just loves wrestling this much. Even when his daughter is looking at him telling him, you look like an idiot, Dad.
Yeah. But you know what? But that's something that a lot of the modern era you don't see of, that passion, right? Like these people, it's, Darby Allin isn't all incorrect when he says that a lot of these people don't care about the sport. So go figure.
Yeah, what a weird time for the industry. Sorry, this has nothing to do with Sorry, guys, this has nothing to do with Mandalorian.
I know.
Baby Yoda has yet to appear in a WWE ring, but like,
I
fingers
can
crossed.
see him. He's just gonna do a choke slam to Triple H.
Well, we did have Sasha
I
Banks.
would pay for that.
We did have
Oh,
Sasha
that's
Banks.
right.
We had Sasha
Oh,
Banks.
good call. Good call.
So that's my segue. Sasha Banks is the segue. And I still don't fully understand why WWE refuses to acknowledge the fact that Sasha Banks is on, the biggest show on TV right now. But
I mean, I have an idea why. They had nothing to do with her getting cast.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Between that and the fact that Vince is afraid of creating superstars nowadays. But it is what it is. All right, so we're going to, we can geek out about wrestling. We're going to geek out about Star Wars instead. So, Phil, take it over before I continue talking wrestling.
Sorry to interrupt your wrestling podcast here. We're going to commentary it.
Way to pile drive the discussion, Phil. That's a wrestling.
We're gonna go all fists into Mandalorian here. So we have our final episode, as Boris mentioned, season 2, episode 8, chapter 16, called The Rescue, directed by Peyton Reed. And just so people are aware, we are going to be spoiling the crap out of this episode. So if you have not seen it, I suggest you hit pause, go watch it, and then come back and figure and learn about all the little things that we picked up through our many watch throughs and discussion points here. So
Phil, before you start, I do want to interject. Yes. And the whole idea of Mando Monday is so that this is when people can really start, talking about the episode, giving spoilers and whatnot. But I think someone pretty major spoiled quite a bit already. And that's Mark Hamill when he went on Twitter basically saying, oh, we've hid this secret for the past year. And I can't believe it was still a secret.
Yeah, I saw that tweet and I'm like, this is why they didn't tell Mark Hamill they're doing this. Because that would have been like the day that they actually told him, hey, we're going to get your CGI likeness de-aged into the film, a la Carrie Fisher of Rogue One.
Okay, see, I have so many questions about how this was actually done for the show. I maintain, I don't know if we're getting into it here, if you want to wait till we get to that portion of the episode.
I think we've all seen it, and we're going to break it down bit by bit. I do have some info about how it was done.
Okay. Because like I was convinced that he did mocap for the face, and then they just aged it down too far into some weird uncanny valley place.
No, they actually used exactly the same method as Rogue One.
Okay.
They cast a guy. I don't have his name here, but
His name is Max Lloyd Jones.
Yes. So
That's
they would
stuck in my brain.
a whole bunch of dots on his face, and they actually superimposed Mark Hamill from previous footage where they analyzed Return of the Jedi, and that's why his mouth is so horribly wrong, the same as Carrie Fisher's in Rogue One. So they actually, because Mark is really horrible at keeping a secret.
Yeah.
This is like, God love him. I know there's a lot of fans of Luke Skywalker out there and of Mark specifically. I'm not a huge Luke fan, but I am a fan of Mark Hamill.
Same boat.
Yeah, and this is basically why they couldn't tell him, because it would have been leaked. He would have gotten drunkenly on Twitter one night and probably spilled the beans. That's my assumption. So I don't think he had any clue, or if he did, he signed a document and forgot about it. They gave him something to wipe his memory.
Now I'm just imagining what the tweet would have been like. How dare you to take that, Ryan Johnson?
Yeah.
You can't kill Luke.
Exactly. That would have been it. That's exactly right. He would have been trolling Ryan like, "Oh, you think he's gone, do you?"
That upsets me for how correct it is.
It's like we don't even have to laugh at it because it's just, we know it's true. So anyhow, we have our opening scene, which, what an opening scene this was, with Slave One basically in pursuit of a Lambda-class T4 shuttle, the kind that we see all over Return of the Jedi, the one that Han Solo has to fly into the, the forest moon of Endor. And yeah, basically, Boba Fett uses an ion cannon, a la Empire Strikes Back. That's what they use to disable the Star Destroyers. It essentially, for anyone who's played the video game or anything, the video games or anything like that, you use the ion cannon to disable a ship and keep it intact. So we get them using that. We see Dr. Pershing and whatnot is on the ship. So immediately we get the tension set up where it's kind of similar to A New Hope in that they're waiting to be boarded. So we're seeing it from the opposite side. We're seeing it from the Empire side of things as the good guys come. And that was even echoed with the way Boba Fett kind of flew over the canopy of the ship to make it really big, almost like the Star Destroyer opening scene in A New Hope, right? So it was really an intimidation tactic, I figure, is the goal of it, but it echoed it a lot. And we see that an awful lot in this show, where Dave and John want to pay homage to the previous films in any way that they can. And we basically get into a whole standoff inside where Din shows up, basically says, "We want Dr. Pershing," and essentially the pilots hold him hostage. The one pilot shoots the other when he tries to negotiate out of there. Cara Dune shows up, and then this guy starts crap talking about Alderaan and defending the Death Stars being blown up. Millions of Empire people, turning the blind eye to the tyranny and whatnot that the Empire is, but pursuing that thread that Lucasfilm seemed to be really heavily going on, in that the Empire is order and you can have belief in that. So she gets pissed. He figures out she's an Alderaanian because of the tear on her the tattoo, and she just shoots him. And they take Dr. Pershing, and he's a kind of a willing hostage at this point. So what do we think of the opening, guys? Chris, how did you find it?
I liked it. Like, I honestly, like, I feel like we all knew exactly what the broad strokes of what this episode was going to be. It's like, Mando got to get Baby Yoda back. I'm never gonna call him Grogu. But the quick exchange of like, I was on the Death Star, and characters like, which one? Like that is such a perfect nod to literally everything Star Wars has done. Like, there's so, like, what I love so much about this show is there's so much history, like this world's history to play with, and even just little throwaway lines like that, they get me.
Yeah, and this episode had quite a few of them. Boris?
Yeah, no, I think it was.
Do you have
really
any takeaways?
No, yeah, it was really well done. Again, it was you kind of knew right from the get-go what type of episode this was going to be, but it is always good to see like how far they're willing to go to save Baby Yoda, how far everyone is willing to go to kind of win the day. So yeah, it adds to a lot of the themes that we've been talking about over the entire season, and that's how far would you go?
Yeah, for a Klondike bar.
Yeah.
Ah,
Pretty
boo.
far. Pretty far.
Tyler, you have any takeaways from that opening?
I mean, I'm gonna be button heads with Chris a little bit, I think, but I thought this episode was overall pretty good.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I'll say this. I really like this episode.
Oh, fair.
There is one thing, and it's not the Luke thing that I absolutely hated. But we'll get to it. But overall, I think this season as a whole is better than season 1.
Oh yeah.
And I was on this ride the entire time.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll have some mild disagreements over
Yes, I'm sure we will.
which little bits were like overall good, but I thought this should have been a little bit, or yeah.
To be honest, look, the emotions of this episode are its own thing.
Hmm.
All right, like that was an experience. My takeaway is I found this finale a little bit disappointing in some aspects.
Burn
don't
the
know.
heretic.
What's that?
I said burn the heretic.
Yeah, I know, right? Like this just wasn't my favorite episode of the season. I don't think it doesn't go on the bad scale for me, but there were choices made in this that I'm not necessarily hugely jumping for joy about, but I do understand the larger narrative and probably the reasons why they had to make them.
Yeah.
But that's it's a long play. Right. And that's basically where I'm at with it, is having the maturity now and the trust. I think Dave and John have earned our trust as fans. So recently after the sequel series disappointed and probably hurt that trust the most, and violating everything by not really doing their due diligence for planning.
Yeah,
Right,
JJ.
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole mess with Ryan, and I blame Kathleen Kennedy for that, but to her credit, I have to give her credit for getting this done. I have to give her credit for Rogue One. I have to give her credit for Solo. There are things that did happen that maybe got missed or maybe are underappreciated by large portions of the fan base because of the joke that the sequel trilogy became, right? So
Well, I mean that's the weird thing is the biggest problem with Star Wars is the Skywalker saga.
mhm.
It's so buried in so much very specific lore,
Yep.
and people have such strong emotional ties to it. Nothing is going to be good enough. I'm in the camp that really loved The Last Jedi, except for that terrible casino scene. Or not, yeah, The Last Jedi, except for that terrible casino scene.
I found another one.
I love that film. I love the things it sets up. I like the idea that Rey is a nobody. That's what makes her special. That she can come from nothing and become one of the most powerful only Jedi left, period. Instead of like, no, you're like Snoke's granddaughter. Shut up. Stop it. That's
Well,
no, you're Palpatine's granddaughter. It's terrible. Like,
and Snoke is
and Snoke is nothing. Like, I love that.
Defective clone.
But but nothing was ever going to be. It's the same thing that happened with the prequels. Honestly, the prequels came out and people compared them to the emotions they had tied to that original trilogy.
Yeah,
and it's never going to live up to the hype that you build in your own mind. That's why I think stuff like Rogue One, big chunks of Solo. I think Solo's still maybe the weirdest movie of the franchise, just in how it all happened. And then like the animated shit, like Rebels and Clone Wars are, for my money, the best Star Wars.
Yep.
Yep.
And they're divorced from having to be mired in like, oh, Luke Skywalker's had a real rough go of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's partially why I was so happy for the longest time that they were moving away from the Skywalkers, which is even why, like, I do question the fact that it was Luke later on in this episode came, because as Disney is trying to move away from the Skywalkers, it's like, hey, here's a reminder: you can't have Star Wars without the Skywalkers. Boom, shoehorned, and they had so many options, from Ezra to Cal to
Oh my
so
God.
so many options.
If a live action Ezra would have popped up in this episode, I would have started crying, just bawling.
I actually have a theory on all this that I briefly talked to Phil about breaking one of our rules.
Yes.
And including why I think it was Luke and not Ezra. I think we should get to that towards the end because I think that fits better.
Yeah,
but I have a theory.
Oh yeah, we're still in the the cold open, aren't we?
Yeah, I have a theory on why they did that and how they could justify it. I'm not saying they're gonna I'm always a hopeful maybe they won't hurt me this time.
Yeah, I know this is going to be the most contentious.
This is how I know
point
that Tyler doesn't watch wrestling anymore, because when it comes to narrative and what they should do is never what they actually do. So.
Oh sure. Oh yeah. Look.
Amanda's gonna hit someone with a steel folding chair. Just you wait.
A Beskar folding
chair. There was
chair.
a DDT.
Come on.
There was a DDT in this episode.
It's true. It's true.
So yeah, we're gonna keep it marching forward here. It is an action heavy episode, so there's not going to be that much narration by myself here. But we then see Slave One basically flying past a whole bunch of smokestacks that have the Imperial symbol on it. If you look really, really closely, he lands in basically the spaceship parking lot, right next to Bo-Katan's ship, the Gauntlet, which we see an awful lot of in Clone Wars and in Rebels too, I believe. So he goes into the bar. Bo-Katan and Casca Reeves are there, which is Sasha Banks, which we've been talking about, her and some of her special moves coming up in said fight. And they take issue with Boba Fett being there. They recognize the voice. It's a clone voice. So he's no Mandalorian. And yeah, the little bit of a fight ensues. And then finally, basically, Din is like, hey, look, the kid's missing. Can we cut this shit out? And then it moves fast, right? Like then that seems to be the one thing that's consistent in this story. All Din has to do is bring up the kid, and we've got everybody's buy-in immediately. Well, so
to her credit, Bo-Katan says, I'll help you if X.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that sets up, I think that's an important thing to bring up, because that sets up, I believe, the linkage to the other shows and probably the narrative for the Mandalorian going forward. Because without Grogu in the mix, Din needs something to be tied to in order to drive his efforts.
Him to have a plot.
Yes, for him to have relevance to a plot.
He is a very reactive character, which is not a flaw, and you can do a lot of good plots for that. But I think that's the reason that people like Keith, who we had on previously, talks about how each episode is he shows up, asks a question, and someone's like, I'll answer that question if you do X. Which again is very Wolf and Cub. They're very reactive characters. He's like, this fucking universe, everyone needs their laundry delivered.
Basically, yes. Well, it works, right? But if we're gonna take away Grogu, if we're gonna take away Grogu, then he needs something else to do that, and that's what we set up. And conveniently, it happens that Moff Gideon has Grogu, and that serves the narrative of Bo-Katan, who is she wants that Darksaber. And the deal is, I don't care if I want to be the person that takes out basically Moff Gideon, because she needs that Darksaber, and she knows what that sets up for her. And they get back onto Slave One, and they're talking about it with Dr. Pershing, and Dr. Pershing is quite forward. This is where the Dark Troopers are. This is where Grogu is. This is what you're going to need to achieve. And it's because he wants to see Grogu live. We've established that as part of his character matrix in the first season. And it seems like that makes him the most willing hostage in this situation. They grab his little data stick pen thing, and away they go. We've got this plan where they're going to crash into the launch tube with the Imperial shuttle and limit the amount of TIE fighters. It was actually a pretty good plan, I got to say. So Boba Fett just trails the ship, trails the Lambda class, and is shooting at it, making it look real, like they're in trouble. They radio in, and they crash that tube after only 2 TIE fighters get out, which I couldn't help but think of Battlestar Galactica and Katie Sackhoff landing those Vipers into the nacelles of Battlestar Galactica. And I'm like, this is such a weird nostalgia piece that's Star Wars and Battlestar all in one for me. So we get them inside, and yeah, before we get to the action, what did you all think, Tyler? You're up.
Oh, look, the fact that finally people have plans that do or don't go wrong is a wonderful addition to Star Wars. The number of times that like there's no real planning, and we talked about how like, oh my god, someone has military tactics. Someone is like, what if we flank them? And they're like, oh my god, genius.
Yeah, that is very true. I like the fact that they had a plan. I'm just like,
I'm agreeing. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, so if we block the launch tube, they can't launch. Yes.
yeah. Well, they took advantage of the probably one of the biggest weak points in the Imperial design of that particular light cruiser.
Yeah.
Right, which we hadn't really seen up until now, only in the cartoons, only in Rebels and Clone Wars. Chris, what do you think of all that?
But yes to everything Tyler said, but I also want to add, I don't know about you guys, hearing the scream of a TIE fighter always makes me so giddy.
Yeah.
And like I that sound and that shape, everything about it is so perfect and so incredibly Star Wars that like regardless of what's going on, the moment they're going up that ship and you see those two TIE fighters come out and you hear them, it I feel like I'm sitting in a movie theater watching a Star Wars movie. So like as far as setting tone of what's to come, that was a huge help for me. But like, yeah, no, it's great. It's great that they're not just kind of flying by like last week's episode when Mando and Bill Burr went into the Imperial base. It just kind of made it up as they went along, and then it ended up in everybody having to die. Like it's nice. It's nice that like, okay, these are some people who know how to get things done, and they're gonna figure it out before they just run in guns blazing.
Yeah.
But they knew there was a terminal in the kitchen.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
Where else would they? I don't know. Where do you keep your terminals? Mine are all in the kitchen, obviously.
Yeah.
I know. Standard Imperial procedure is put it in the kitchen.
Yeah, you get a Diet Coke, and then you hit the terminal.
Yeah, it's what we do. We have to take our helmet off to drink the Diet Coke so it can scan your face, right?
Yeah.
A face scanner in the kitchen is so weird.
But it's the most Star Wars thing ever. It's like, what I love about this show is that they give you all the Star Wars tropes, no matter how dumb they are, in a sense that they're almost making fun of themselves. You know, they're not taking themselves that serious anymore.
Yeah, it is part of the stick that John and Dave have determined is acceptable, is going back to that Star Wars humor that can make fun of itself in those indirect ways. And I do appreciate that out of the production team, and what they've decided is something that they're allowed to play with now, and different fan bases react differently to it, which is hilarious, right?
Exactly.
We can be all salty and crusty and tear it apart, but
one thing I love about Star Wars in general is convenience, and convenience takes over. It's like, you know, in this episode, it was very convenient that Boba Fett just so happened to be away the entire time that Luke showed up.
Yeah, true enough.
Because you know that
I didn't even. I legitimately did not think about that until right now. I was like, oh yeah, he wasn't there, was he?
Yeah, he took off.
He takes off like a bat out of hell after taking out those 2 TIE fighters, and he's just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
See you guys. I hope you get the kid. I don't know how that conversation happens, but you know, well, obviously we see it on the flip side of the episode where it goes. But so yeah, so we basically see Din going to get the Dark Troopers and free Grogu while they're doing a pincer movement with taking the ship with the rest of them, Fennec, Cara, and Bo-Katan, and Sasha Banks, and everybody, the Mandalorian crew there. And we see them use your great wrestling move in their initial deployment. Where
Oh wait, that's right. Fennec was with them, wasn't she?
Yeah.
yes, she's just a background sharpshooting, but she is there. So yeah, she is there. She's kind of in the background doing the sniper stuff. So what we've got is we got Din going out on his own because Dr. Pershing had let our heroes know that there's a 2-minute power-up cycle for the Dark Troopers. So we've got a window where he's got to navigate, but they do have the schematic. He's got to navigate to the area. They ask, is it possible to get there in time? And sure enough, Din's basically doing his casual walk through the ship without much urgency. And he walks by a little bit of a nostalgia hit for me, the original Kenner Death Star droid. So it's actually an RA7 droid I found out last night. Thank you, Internet. And basically, he gets down to where the Dark Troopers are, and these things are pretty much about to walk out the door. He closes the doors, and we get basically one of them gets his fingers in there and pulls the doors apart. Very similar to Terminator 2 Judgment Day when the T-1000 kind of pops the door.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of a cool reference to that. And they get out, and man, this is quite the fight. I was impressed with how hammer and tongs this thing got, where Din Djarin is getting his head just pounded into the bulkhead. And that Beskar armor does not let up. Like,
Yeah.
I was convinced the first time I'm watching it, like, is the helmet dented now? Like, is there going to be a new Black Series helmet that's announced with the fist kind of dent in there? Like, what kind of marketing is Disney going to do for this? And basically, Mando defeats this thing with the Beskar spear. He gives it a good whack to the neck. And after spending like all of his ammo and all of his to try and, take this thing down, and it just doesn't have a weakness other than the obvious weakness of the exposed kind of parts, I guess. But you need something strong enough to penetrate it. Chris, what'd you think of that? Being a wrestling guy, I'm sure.
Man. First of all, like those Dark Troopers are essentially Rock'em Sock'em robots, or like the movie Real Steel. Like they pack a punch. When you realize, like, oh, their primary like non-weapon fighting is just punching as hard as possible, and you just see Mando's head sink into the wall of that ship without the helmet giving way whatsoever. Like, what I appreciate a lot about and it's happened a number of times, is how the show has gone out of the way to point out that Beskar steel is impossible to break. And there's even more of that in this episode that's so much fun to see. Like, I really love how they've essentially played up Mandalorian armor to be one of the strongest things in the galaxy.
Yeah.
And that is on full display here.
Well, agreed, combined with it doesn't make you impervious, because this thing's just strong enough that it's like, yeah, it's not smashing his face, but he's like in the wall, like, all right, what am I gonna do now?
Oh, yeah, he's gonna have a sore face tomorrow for sure.
Oh God,
if he gets out of the wall.
He gets a season off because he's just got a concussion in there. He's like, ma.
Like, anytime Pedro Pascal takes off his helmet, especially for like this episode and the other one, he just looks so confused. I just find that he's got this I'm kind of concussed look all the time about him. I don't know if that's his acting style or what.
Maybe
his face.
Yeah, maybe he's confused like I am, because in season 1 they made it seem like revealing his face to another living being was like the worst possible thing he could do, and he spent the last 2 episodes of this season just showing his face to everybody.
Well, he wrote it into the contract. Come on.
I'm not going to be like Master Chief on that Halo show they're making. I'm going to be everywhere.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to just use my voice. I want you to use me. I know that there was rumors on set about him being upset about always being in the helmet, especially at the beginning of the year. And yeah, I think this was a little bit of a compromise point. And we establish as well with Bo-Katan and her kind of end of the Mandalorian religion, so to speak, would be they're allowed to take their helmets off whenever the hell they want, right? So I think it really signifies to me that Din Djarin is finally kind of understanding it's not the end of the world. He's not going to be any less of a Mandalorian, especially now that he's out of that kind of group, those people who would hold him accountable, I guess, and say you can't take off your helmet, and that's a big no-no. I think being detached from that, if he was still in Navarro and still those guys were all underground hiding out, and they need to adopt that lifestyle because they're trying to hide their numbers. They don't want to be too prevalent, right? They're trying to preserve their race, so to speak. So I that's a deep, sweaty nerd cut, but that's kind of where that's my job. So that's what I got to do. Boris, did you have any feelings about it? I know you're sitting there doing your audio thing right now and watching all of our lovely voices record.
No, I am literally adding a filter to a selfie of mine. That's what I'm doing right now.
Oh my god.
Ooh.
That's priority. That is priority.
Listen,
No, here's the thing. Convenience.
gotta look good.
I love convenience. Convenience was the key here. And this leads me to, and I'm just going to say it right now because this is, might as well get this off my chest. And that's the usage of the Dark Troopers. I thought that, they're built up in the Star Wars universe as this, like, amazing, horrible, big evil type thing. Even this season, they were built up to be, like, this big evil type thing, like, S2E8 type thing. And they were pretty much, like, just wasted. Din Djarin struggled destroying the one. But, and then they kind of had a quick cop-out by getting rid of the other ones, and then we all know what happens at the very end. So I think, part of me wants to say, okay, they are the big evil, and that's just how strong Luke is, but the other part of me is like, it was such a cop-out because they kind of wasted this awesome thing in the Star Wars universe. So that was my only thing as watching this, but overall, like, it was what it was. It's good seeing Din Djarin struggle. He's kind of had it pretty easy for the most part. But yeah, it was also kind of like, right before in a video game, right before you go to the big boss, you kind of deplete yourself of all your weapons. And I love the fact that Moff Gideon calls that out as well. But yeah, it was what it was.
I think it was effective having the Dark Troopers used in that way. And we find out they're third generation. So that stops a huge internet nerd argument over on that side.
Yeah.
But I do think that it served its purpose in the sense that it set up real fear for the end, because we knew a lot was on the line. Like, if Din had that much trouble taking one out, what are they going to do against 39 others?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, or what, whatever a platoon size is defined as for Dark Troopers.
Yeah.
And I also think that it canonizes something that wasn't canon before necessarily now. So now we have this as a real option, just like the E-Web canon was used last season and reinforced into this season. It's something that you can grandfather not only into other episodes of The Mandalorian, but into the universe in general. Yeah. So it becomes a storytelling option. So I don't think that there was any waste. I was disappointed, though, in basically how Din just flew them all out the airlock, alien-esque style, right? Like,
so that is sort of where I run into, and the only issue I had with this, it's when it's one-on-one, I think the Dark Troopers look really cool. When you see many of them together, it looks not great. Like, it's so obviously CGI.
Yeah.
That, like, I started to feel pulled out. Like, oh, now it looks like he's facing off against a cartoon.
Yeah.
And like, which is just when everything in frame is generated on a computer, like that's sort of the issue you run into. But like, I thought specifically the moment when he's battling that one and getting his head pounded into the wall, I thought that looked very, very cool. But then when you see the group of them together, it just, it doesn't look right.
Yeah, it's definitely off. I do find with that kind of stuff, because I the way that this episode worked out, I had Friday off of work. So I was like, all right, I've got a whole bunch of stuff happening later in the day, but in the morning I'm waking up and I'm watching Mandalorian. and I watched it on my 55-inch 4K TV, and I had the sound dialed so loud, like the floorboard was rattling because of I have 3 subs just pounding. All right, so
so you got to hear that. You got to really listen to that super sick hardcore techno beat.
I love that.
Yeah, well, I
hated it.
I loved it.
I have
Drove me insane.
the Skrillex, yeah.
It's
It's
like
the sound, whatever. those
Star Wars the
stormtroopers are on.
remix, man. Holy cow!
But they're droids. They're robots.
I find that it again sets the mood, right? Like, this is Panic. This is Star Wars on crack. But it's just this whole thing's coming at me, and then I could spot all the fake stuff you're talking about. I could see, Chris, this looks really weird. And I could see the CGI on Luke, and I'll go, I don't know, like, this is sitting really weird with me. The same way that when I was in the movie theater for Rogue One, and I'm like, something weird about Leia. For me, Moff Tarkin was great, but Leia was uncanny valley for me.
She was very dramatically overlit, which I think caused a lot of problems in Rogue One.
And the mouth and the eyes, and just everything was just slightly off. But the minute I put it on my 27-inch 4K monitor, then things normalize a lot for me. Then I can get past some of the fakeness because it's compacted enough that it doesn't influence me as much. It doesn't register as fake as it normally does. So I find that that's a trick when I start to see that on certain things. I know that I can dial it down just as a trick for anybody out there. Watch it in a different format, or even, pull it up on your cell phone or whatever and watch it. And it might look a little bit different for you. It might
Don't tell
be a
Chris
little
Nolan
more
that.
accessible.
Oh no!
Oh, don't get me started about Christopher Nolan, you guys. Tenet is hot garbage.
Oh my god, what a weird movie.
It's like I'm more offended that Christopher Nolan thought this movie was worth dying for than I am for COVID itself. And I've had COVID. Like, watching Tenet was almost as bad as me having COVID. Like, God.
Oh, gosh.
What's that movie about? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know this was not on The Mandalorian, but what is that movie about?
Let's put on the calendar a special, because I also have thoughts. And I can tell you what it's about, and I cannot say it's any better than your take.
Not at all. It's terrible. It's a waste of everything. Christopher Nolan is so overrated. Oh. Look,
he came up with an idea. He got a big old blunt, and he was like, "Oh my god!"
No, literally, how I think this movie happened was he's like, "What if there's a fight scene where one guy's fighting forwards and one guy's fighting backwards? That'll look amazing." And then he's like, "Fuck, what do I do with the other 2 hours? I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there."
And he was like, "All right, I got 3 more fight scenes like that." And they're like, "That's just 4. It's just 4 fight scenes."
No, but we'll have Robert Pattinson just say things, I guess, and I don't know. We'll figure it out. It doesn't matter.
We'll have Robert Pattinson have the weirdest character who is like a spy and a PhD in physics and a fixer.
He is the everything to everything. It's so... Oh.
I thought we're going to get Michael Bay to do the cinematography.
Well, no, but it's clever because you see Tenet is spelled the same way, backwards and forwards.
And then you have his
I'm a
fucking...
genius.
He made the cryptogram for it, and he's like, "Look, it's all the important things." And you're like, "Yeah, you did it, Chris. You officially reached Dan Brown levels of creativity."
We're going to put on Tenet spoilers.
God damn it.
This was the movie worth going to a movie theater during a global pandemic. Come on.
I want you to die for this. Christopher,
I had to watch Bill and Ted Face the Music at home, and you wanted me to go see Tenet on the big screen? How dare you?
Bill and Ted was okay. It wasn't great, but it was like...
I enjoyed the heck out of that movie.
Yeah.
It was the exact joy I needed this year.
Yeah. That movie was 2020. Like, hey guys, it's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this.
This episode is 2020 right now.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
is all over the map.
I love it.
Anyway, sorry for yelling about Tenet. We can talk about Star Wars again.
We're just gonna have to put on a Tenet spoiler warning on our Mandalorian. So,
where were we?
Well, Din is going. Don't worry, I have notes. Din
Phil's got
is going to go find Grogu, and when he opens the door, sure enough, Moff Gideon is basically just holding the sword over with a dejected little handcuffed Grogu or child sitting there.
Oh man!
And it was a sad little image for me. I was like, oh,
depressed baby Yoda is more than I can handle.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
He didn't even cheer up. He's just like, oh, we're fucked. Like, it was just, he didn't even react to Din being there, which I thought was an interesting choice. But basically, the showdown happens, and Moff Gideon thinks that he's kind of after the Darksaber as well. And Din just calls it out right off, and he says, I don't care about that thing. And I'm here for the kid. And then you can see Moff Gideon starting to think, and he's just like, okay, well, basically, assume that I know everything is what he opens with Din in this discussion, because he knows that he spent all of his ammo. He knows that Bo-Katan and them are probably up on the bridge wondering where the hell he is. He knows that they probably killed everybody, so they're not going to get any more information than basically what they have at that point. And he's just like, well, now, if he doesn't care about the Darksaber, this could work for me. The guy's pretty smart, and he knows that's probably going to be a motivator for me as to why he so easily loses the battle to Din, because he knows that it's going to be able to guarantee his life in some way, because now it sets up that basically Din Djarin is going to have to fight Bo-Katan, or she's going to fight him in order to get the Darksaber. But this all isn't apparently abundantly clear, because in Rebels, Sabine gives Bo-Katan the blade.
Yes.
So
yeah,
this doesn't really
What happened?
consistently follow, and I am legitimately confused, because Dave Filoni did Rebels. Like, this isn't like Rian Johnson did Rebels and Dave's now doing his own thing. This is something that kind of Dave Filoni canonized. However, the only thing that I can think of, reaching into my bag of Star Wars bullshit, is that Bo-Katan has to win it back in a duel because she probably lost it in a duel. So I think that sets up, like, it's a matter of principle. She probably got a lot of backlash from people about getting it from Sabine anyway, so she doesn't want to redo that route. She knows the history and the lore, and she knows that for it to have meaning, it's going to have to be won in a fight. That's the only thing I can get out of that.
Maybe she shouldn't have it if she's just going to lose it again.
Well, I think it sets up either there's going to be that fight, and I don't know that Bo-Katan wins that fight. Like, does it set up Din to be the reluctant leader?
So this is where we start to get where I think they're going. And that is that we could, and I think that they're going to catch that problem and have to backfill. And one of the possibilities is Bo-Katan probably needs to get the Mandalorian extremists on her side to stand a chance.
Right.
And she knows, like, it's not, the Mandalorians are in a worse state than they are when she just takes it from Sabine. And it might be that she's like doubling down, like, no, I need to dot all the I's and cross all the T's to get as many people on side as possible. Versus in the before times, the Mandalorians, she was like, I got enough of a coalition being kind of wishy-washy with the rules. I also think that, especially with her getting shot the shit out of right there, that we are building up to Din being the reluctant Mandalore, and using him to unify the different sects.
I don't know if I want that.
I'm not saying I want it. I'm saying that's what they're building towards.
I just want to follow Mando and Baby Yoda around the galaxy. What planet we going to this week, kid? Like that's the version of the show I could legit watch for a decade. And I understand that like in the world of peak TV, that is not necessarily what people are looking for. But for me, this is like The Mandalorian is essentially like space Rockford Files, which is just like there are stakes, but it's just kind of every week it's a new adventure, or like the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or whatever it was called.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like that's what I love about the show, because like on my first watch of season 1, as I was covering it, I did not like the show. It didn't click because I thought it was failing at being this thing. But then towards the end of the season, I was like, oh, wait, no. It's actually succeeding at being this entirely other thing. We're just not used to it as viewers anymore. Like, in a world where we have Breaking Bad and we have, like, The Walking Dead has been telling a 95 billion year story that just won't end, no matter how much I want it to. We're not used to stuff like Buffy the Vampire Slayer anymore, where there's an overarching theme, but it's all week to week to week. And once I realized, like, oh, that's what they're doing, I love the show. So that's what I want. I hope it doesn't veer into more of that sort of high concept television where, like, no, now it's this ongoing story about a man trying to unite his planet and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's too high stakes, I think.
It is, but the only asterisk I'd throw on that is the vision right now that Lucasfilm are applying to other shows, right? We know that there's going to be Rangers of the New Republic taking place at the same time as this. We know that there's going to be Ahsoka, and that's going to be going after Thrawn, we assume. And maybe Ezra gets introduced into that. We should see some kind of closure or some advancement on what's going on that end of things, given the state that Rebels ended in. So I think that there's a lot at play here where there's going to be things combining to make like a meta event that's happening across all of these shows that will give it some significance, like an Endgame. You know, quite literally, they're building an Endgame for TV, which is the most 2020 thing that you can do, right? Because it's like, well, movie theaters are screwed. This occupies way too much time to build a 23 movie arc for an audience, and they want something in the next 4 to 5 years, and they want to do it from their couch. So what's Disney got to do? They've got to piece this all together, and they've got the people there to do it. They've got the Feiges, they've got John, they've got Dave, and they're like, okay, here's the keys, and you know, here's what you can work with.
Because isn't Feige's producing a Star Wars movie, isn't he? Wasn't that announced at some point?
Yes, he is. He's highly involved as far as the mapping of Star Wars, and apparently, like the speak out there, it's not really rumors. It is bona fide and verified stuff that people have observed. If you thought Feige was a huge nerd for Marvel, Feige's an even bigger nerd for Star Wars. Like the shit that guy has up there is on par with Paulo Hidalgo. It's just like, wow, okay, so he this is what he grew up on.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. We all know that TV crossover events can work. CW and the Arrowverse did really. They made me care about the Flash. You know, they made me care
now you're
about
speaking
Arrow.
my language.
You know, they made me care about the shows I would never watch because it's CW, and I just can't stand the CW isms. But you know, they're taking
for
that
real talk. If you guys aren't watching Legends of Tomorrow, the weirdest DC comic series of all time, save for maybe Doom Patrol on whichever service they're putting it on now, like the CW managed to use their crossovers to make like Captain Cold and Heatwave and like the Atom and all these characters nobody cares about into one of like the most compelling shows.
Yeah,
it's so bizarre they did it.
Yeah, and they were able to do it really well. So, you know, you take these properties on a actual TV budget and it worked. You know, the sky's the limit for what they're going to do at Lucasfilm.
Yeah, and Lucasfilm isn't working with a normal TV budget either.
Exactly.
They're throwing so much money out of this to build Jon Favreau bigger and bigger digital screens to put behind people.
Yep.
Yeah, and like we found out they're building 3 more. And they're even bigger than the one that they've already built, which they already expanded for season 2.
Yeah.
So
turning into the
It's-
Lazarus
it's-
pits.
Well,
God.
it's good for movie making, because eventually they're going to be like, okay, half the year we're shooting our stuff in it, but the other half of the year they're going to be like, we can rent this out. You know what I mean? Like we can do whatever Lucasfilm does, or we can commandeer other projects. into it.
And I think
Because
it's also a
as we know, Lucasfilm do all the stuff. Like,
Yeah, and I think it's also a
Yeah.
contingency in case there's another world pandemic.
Yeah,
yeah,
you can
it's
do
all like
it without a lot. Also, I would like to rent it to just play Xbox.
exactly.
Like that seems fun.
It does. And yeah, one thing that I did kind of pick up in that whole duel, I guess, with Moff Gideon was that the Beskar spear, when held, like, because that the Darksaber, they clash, and you could see the Beskar spear start to heat up and potentially get to the point where it melts. And we didn't see that with Ahsoka in her fight with the spear.
Well, we have confirmed in Mandalorian that the Darksaber can cut Beskar eventually, and the Darksaber is somehow more powerful than other lightsabers.
No.
I think it's because it has an edge.
I think it's because it has an edge, and I think it's also it's using platidium to just it is the best of the Mandalorians and the Jedi. Therefore,
Yeah, I think it's one of the oldest sabers, is it not? I don't know. I know that there's that famous animation from Rebels that always floats on the internet, telling the story in that shadow, right? So,
True.
I will say, Mando looked like a real dope for just assuming that he would be able to walk away with the child.
yeah,
Like, oh, well, you can just take the kid and go. He's like, oh, okay. Look, and then
Yeah,
you turn your back on the dude who wants you murdered.
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind?
that was just so weird for me because exactly that. He turned his back to him, and I'm like, "Are you this dumb? Like, have you not learned anything? It is one of the things that I find frustrating with Din Djarin as a entity in the Star Wars universe. Is like he's got to be the most observant dad I've ever seen, surrogate dad to a child, right? Because he's like, "Oh yeah, you need to eat." That was a theme this year. Was just like, "Oh, I forgot." Like last year, they openly joke about it when he's like, the lady at the spaceport on Tatooine is like, "Don't you know how to look after a child?" You know what I mean? Like she's kind of mothering the baby, whereas Din's kind of it's an accessory for him.
Yeah.
And then this season he's treating it because his feelings and his relationship with the child is definitely growing. The bond is there, and then he's becoming more aware of the child's safety and things like that. But he's still largely negligent, right? He's just like,
oh, 100%. Because he's so often he's like, my one and only duty is to keep this child alive. But like, can you watch him so I can go fight this giant sandworm?
Yeah.
like go
like
play
Timothy
with
Olyphant.
spiders.
Timothy Olyphant, who already admitted that you stole this Mandalorian armor. Can you just watch this kid for a while I go take care of this town's problem?
Yeah.
Well,
Problem
how about
solved.
go play with the spiders.
Yeah.
I gotta hang out in this, deal with this hot water thing.
Oh man.
The girl, me and Frog Lady are talking. Go occupy yourself for a while.
Yeah, she's naked. Let her get dressed. Turn your back. It was
Cut
there's
to
just some
frog baby
funny-
genocide.
Yeah.
Whew.
No controversy at all. So yeah, we have this confrontation on the bridge, right? We have Moff Gideon laying there covering up the blaster with, because that's what capes are good for, right? It's like, all right, I knew I put this on this morning for a reason, not just to look badass, but
I'm super glad that a cape, because everyone's fucking wearing capes in Star Wars, was finally used for something. Whether it was keeping
PJ
warm.
cape.
yeah, it wasn't a Lando cape. It actually had a usage. So
Lando's cape has a usage. It makes him look cool.
It's how he can slay on the reg.
Ooh, yeah. Well, especially after he loses the Falcon. He doesn't have a cool ship to show people
Exactly.
anymore.
Yeah, he has to become like mayor of a town to get that level of cred again. God, what a weird arc he has.
Oh my god.
And actually,
So
this
yeah.
is a complete aside, but yesterday I was listening to old episodes of the show like 5 years ago, and we literally had this conversation about Lando when the comic came out.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and now we have the Lando TV show. I can't wait. I'm assuming it's just about like him campaigning to be in charge of Cloud City.
Yeah.
Look, I honestly am here for just a himbo stumbling his way throughout the Star Wars universe. Because it now seems like
it's somehow failing upwards into more and more power.
that appears to be his entire plot line, and then he just ends up in a rave at the end of it, and is still like, oh well, we'll get you back for the biggest fight in history again, you burnout. He's just at a rave.
I completely forgot that. God, the Rise of Skywalker is so bad. We're
Happy
bringing
one
Lando back. How? Oh well, we're gonna go to Space Coachella, and he's just gonna be hanging out with the weird aliens. Like what? Somehow it makes the least and the most sense for that character, and it blows my mind. Of course, that's where he ended up, but like, come up with something better. Come on.
Oh my gosh. I'd love to do a deep dive on that one. Oh,
I don't know if your guys' discussions usually go this weirdly off the rails.
they do.
So if
They
not,
do.
I'm sorry. Okay,
they do.
good.
No, this is
Okay,
normal. This is part of what everybody in the audience knows we're gonna do. I'm sure of that. So yeah, so we basically at this point we see, let's get to it. The X-Wing come in, and immediately
Oh,
I'm
boy.
like, is this gonna be the dude from Kim's Convenience gonna like get killed by these dark troopers? But no,
I was like, fingers crossed for Porkins.
yeah, exactly.
We got this. Come on, buddy. If we're doing callbacks, let's do it. Let's call some stuff back.
Yeah.
I got this, guys.
Let's lean into it. Exactly. So we almost immediately, we see the cloaked figure, and we see the green lightsaber, and then it's an inevitability at this point, and it is interesting in the sense that it echoes a lot, especially when Luke finally gets up to the kill box, right? Like to that hallway, when he's just cutting through these things like butter, like we've all noted, because they come back, they fly in through the basically open side in the ship that all Star Wars Imperial vessels have. The Dark Troopers, reestablish that they're going to beat down the door. It builds up this sense of dread. We have Luke Skywalker walking around with the green lightsaber, just cutting through them. Nothing's stopping him. We have Moff Gideon tries to take out the child with that hidden gun,
Yeah.
and then tries to off himself, and Cara Dune is like, no, we're not having any of that. We've got
the moment when he
Bo-Katan.
pulled,
Yeah,
that moment with the gun to his head was, I thought he was going to do it.
Same.
I thought that was good writing, because that was like that. This guy is a believer,
Yeah.
mhm.
right? He is willing to try every trick in the book to get his way,
Yeah.
and if he can't, I am an asset that needs to be not in their hands.
And it also mirrors that he had the other Imperial officer in the Bo-Katan intro episode when
Yep.
he killed himself with the cyanide pill. It echoes that he's willing to die for this cause too, right? Like,
Mhm.
it really was consistent with the belief. You're right about that. And I thought immediately of that Imperial officer doing the deed.
I also want to circle around to, and I don't think they did this well, but I think what they were trying to allude to was that as much as Mandalorians are badasses with their particular style of fighting, it still is more in line with what a regular person in the Star Wars universe is doing, right? They're more like Han than a Jedi.
Yeah.
And I think they were trying to allude to these Dark Troopers were like the hard counter to regular fighting styles, and they just stopped prepping for Jedi shit because they were gone.
Yeah.
And I don't think they did a good job doing it. I think that's what they're trying to do, and they failed.
Well, let's be honest about it. The Empire never really had to deal with Jedi.
Yeah,
all it had to deal with was suppressing people, right? Like controlling environments and taking people's motivation to resist away,
Yep.
and hammer them into submission, right? Like the Empire, like the Jedi were all but gone. You know, Vader's pet project was, let's go get the rest of them. Let's go get who survived, right?
Yeah.
Padme must be avenged. So that's kind of, yeah, I don't think that was really in the scope of the Empire, but I think it also said a lot about Moff Gideon's actual fear of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm sure the whispers in the back halls of the Empire, especially post Return of the Jedi, are like, holy shit, Luke killed both the Emperor and Darth Vader. He's got to be, you know, even more powerful than Darth Vader is.
Yeah.
Thing like,
well, and
yeah.
the allegedly canon, what is it, Tales of Luke Skywalker? It's a series of short stories of like stuff Luke does before setting up training, and they're all over the place in terms of quality and what's happening in them.
Yeah.
But they kind of established that Luke goes on this like training montage of just gathering all of the Force styles.
Yeah.
And then he messes up a kid.
Yeah.
And kicks off a whole new series of movies with a Vader replicant.
Yep.
Yeah. God. Yeah.
It's interesting. So we essentially get up to this little corridor. Gideon's kind of, you know, subdued. We've got the Dark Troopers there trying to get in, but obviously they turn away, and they're more focused on Luke as the big threat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually almost exactly like Rogue One when Vader walks into that hallway at the end. And even to the point where Vader, his last action in that kill box hallway is to force choke one of the guys. And what does Luke do? He force crushes one of the Dark Troopers, which is actually a huge no-no for Jedi to do. Like, that is something that's almost forbidden except against basically droids. So it falls within this little loophole that exists for Jedi to be able to do this if they so please. Comes in, he does the big reveal, the CGI Luke, which we've talked about the failings of and successes for. And essentially, Din Djarin has a very mirrored moment as when Luke has to take the mask off of Darth Vader. So Darth Vader or Anakin can see Luke one last time with his own eyes. Din takes off his helmet for Grogu. And probably the first time Grogu's actually touched him with the little claw fingers, right? Which was quite a moment. I think the internet cried. I believe not only was Din Djarin, or Pedro Pascal in tears for that moment, but I think most of the internet, and I think that if you say that you weren't moved by this, you're probably pretty dead inside, because it was not that I'm going to make
you're a
judgment,
liar,
but yeah, you're a liar. So
Phil will fight you.
Yeah, and then we get R2D2 coming in, which was hilarious to me, because cynical me at this point, I thought of Boris, because I know R2 is Boris's favorite. So I'm immediately happy for him. But I saw Grogu immediately lights up and reacts to R2 being there. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's pretty much the way Disney designs all their toys.
They go maximum toyetic.
Yeah, the kid's going to go right to the toy. I want this. But we do have that.
I mean, it's fun colors, and it goes boop, boop, beep, beep, boop, boop.
Exactly.
Like, what more do you need?
Which 50-year-old doesn't need to buy this, right? So we have Grogu go to him, and basically R2 reacts in such a way that it certainly implies that they know each other. So possibly R2 knows Grogu from his days in the Padawan training facility on Coruscant. I'm there. Maybe R2 is the guy who snuck out Grogu.
See, that's the thing. Like, I thought of that because I messaged you about that, but then like it goes against the fact that his memories were wiped at some point.
R2's memories were never wiped.
C-3POs were. R2's were.
There you go.
R2's are never wiped, which is why they can get it away, because R2 never says a word.
And also,
which
I
is
think
why
he
they
was
could get
also
away with
attracted to R2 because it reminded him of the ball.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
I
clever.
also appreciate that R2D2 is now the key to this entire series.
He always
the
has
real,
been.
He's the real
Yeah.
chosen one.
Not
Yeah,
my favorite droid, but definitely top 5. Definitely top 5.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting choice. Tyler had texted me and he goes, "They made choices in this episode."
Yep.
This.
I mean,
might as well
honestly,
that
I was more excited by that than I was by seeing Luke Skywalker.
Oh, fair.
Luke was fine. It's fine.
My disappointment, and this is where I've had to really dig into this episode. I enjoyed it. I liked the emotion of it. I liked the finality of it. The story is closed, yet we have so many more questions, right? I liked everywhere where it brought me. I just wish that it wasn't about frickin' Luke again. I understand that they needed to do it with Luke, all right? Because they have set up that Luke was building an academy. This, if you follow the canon stuff, this is exactly happening at the time where Luke apparently visits Typhon, which was kind of what everybody was freaking out about with having to go to Tython and place Grogu on the Seeing Stone. It was, possibly it was going to be Cal Kestis show up. Possibly it's going to be Ezra. Possibly it's going to be a dark Jedi, like a Sith user. Possibly it's going to be someone we don't even know of yet, or someone else that survived. There's a whole range of possibilities, but Luke, being as powerful as he is the one that received the call and seems to be the one that was out there looking for it. So I was disappointed, to be honest, to see Luke back. I don't mind that he's back, but I wish that there was some other things that could have been done.
Yeah, like I said,
Go
ahead. Sorry.
I was also going to say, I feel like there was a big thing on the internet where people were mad that they didn't recast Luke, and I saw Sebastian Stan's name thrown around a lot, and I feel like I don't know how you guys view, and I'm assuming we could get into it, how you view what the future of this show is. I'm not expecting Luke to be a major character going forward. Like we're not going to get CG Luke here and there throughout the rest of the series. So, and I feel like the internet likes to forget that Sebastian Stan is literally an Avenger. They're not going to pay that much money to a dude to do like a scene or two. So while the CG didn't work as well as, I don't know why they thought it would. The people were very loud about it after Rogue One, but I feel like while the CG didn't work as well as they hoped it would, recasting would have been the worst choice.
Recasting also means that suddenly you open up this whole thing of, as you said, we need to get away from it just being the Skywalkers.
Right, exactly.
And then all of a sudden it's just, well, now it's this Luke, and now we're going to do the Luke story.
Oh, God.
Right? So this is, we're going to my theory now. And this is not me saying I want this to happen. This is me saying what I think is going to happen, is I think that they put Grogu away with Luke for a time jump. We're going to do some other stuff. We're going to have the Book of Boba Fett. And then we all know how Luke's school ends. Grogu's gonna, I don't know, we're gonna have a camera pan, and it's like, oh, Grogu's right there, just watching, what is happening here? Grogu's gonna get out again, and we're gonna end up with him back there after a time jump, so we can change the dynamic a little bit, and we can fix some of it. Fix.
But then he's not so and please, you guys seem to be more in tune with how the timeline is set up. Isn't this show essentially roughly 2 decades before the sequel trilogy?
Right, somewhere in there. We have a little bit. There's a little bit of fudge room. We don't know exactly.
It's about 4 years after Return of the Jedi.
Right.
So we're talking about 25 years before the next movie.
So it's long enough that Baby Yoda could be. You guys use the proper names for all these characters. I'm like Mando, Baby Yoda. It's long enough to where he could be more in control of his powers, but still definitely be a baby.
Yes. Well, I think they're gonna do a little toddler Yoda, and they're not gonna be it's Teen Yoda now.
So they're giving him the Groot treatment then. They're just
Yeah.
going to slowly age him up.
Yeah.
But like, then my question becomes like, if that's what this show is, how does it not wildly intersect with the sequel trilogy? Are they going to release a special edition sequel trilogy where suddenly Baby Yoda's just CGI'd into the background?
I don't think so. I mean, the Star Wars universe, and I've talked about this before, is bizarrely gargantuan for how little we see of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my thing of like, if you look at the numbers of the Star Wars universe, people always ask the question of like, how does not everyone know about Jedi? And it was like at the height there were 100,000, and the population of the galaxy is like 1,000 billion. So it's like it's less than 1% of 1% of 1%, and most of them are on Coruscant.
Well, that's the thing. I'm just like, yeah, but like Mando seems to go to like Tatooine a lot. Like, there's
Look,
he's going to these mainline Star Wars planets. Like, I'm assuming there will be a time jump. But I like in my mind, I kind of figured that we would pick back up before all the Kylo Ren stuff happened. Like Baby Yoda would leave the academy or whatever Luke's building his weird Boy Scout camping trip before it all went south. But like, yeah, that's who knows?
I mean, the other thing is we don't know what the difference of the time is, because Kylo Ren is a bad guy for maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what that difference is.
Well, in Rise of Skywalker, we get Luke training Leia, right? Which happened before this moment in this universe. So Luke trains Leia. Leia stopped training because she was pregnant with Ben. That's the official reason why she stopped training. So then Luke decides to go set up the academy because he's now like, hey, I like training. This is kind of cool, and there's got to be other Force users out there. I'm going to dedicate my life into finding them, because as you pointed out, he's kind of learned a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Like previous to this, he only knew Form 3 and Form 4, basically. In the lightsaber battle in this sequence, we apparently see him using some Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, all combined. So we can see him starting to gel all these different forms that the geeks have broken down on the internet. Thank you, Star Wars Theory.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Are this different Jedi fighting styles?
Yes, there's different sword styles. It is quite a thing, right?
Okay.
So there
is officially too much Star Wars.
Yeah, the Form 4 Ataro, which is acrobatic. That's mostly what like Luke uses in Empire Strikes Back. There's Form 3, Soresu, which is blaster defense. And there was actually a move where he used his lightsaber in behind his back to deflect a shot from a Dark Trooper. The same move that was in Revenge of the Sith, right?
What is the form that's in The Force Awakens when like Kylo Ren is just like hacking at the guy like it's the lightsaber fighting for me is broken up in between the trilogies. In the original trilogy, it is very dueling. It feels very dueling almost. Then it's in the prequels, it's almost like Cirque du Soleil, where it's like, no, I have to like do a triple backflip, spin, and then land and hit you with the lightsaber. And then by the sequel trilogy, it's just the MMA, where it's just like, I'm gonna murder you by hitting you as hard as I can with this thing.
Well, yeah, you're losing forms in that sense, but essentially, Darth Vader uses Form 5, which is Shen Diem So, which is aggressive. That's basically just pure out aggression. So, and that would be Form 4 is the counter, or Form 3 is the counter for it. Sorry, Form 4 is the counter for it, and that's acrobatic. So that's kind of where the prequels were set up. So that's about as much geek as I can get on this one. But we do have, just so we can have this final like discussion about where this is all headed. We've referenced it, the post-credit scene, which is basically a mirroring of the opening of Return of the Jedi, coming down that staircase. There is Bib Fortuna on a throne, which is the third time that we've seen Bib Fortuna, because he was in Phantom Menace beside Jabba, and it seems like he is eating some pizza. That is for sure. That guy has got a carbohydrate issue, and he's quite weighty, and as we all are in 2020 due to
he looks plump and happy. You got self-care, man.
Yeah, he's living the life as the main man, and he
Fortune of
says
the
the
Hut.
word McClunky.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
I
So-
heard it, and I was watching it with the GameSpot team because we were breaking it down. And I heard, I was like, "Did he just say McClunky?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "He just said McClunky." They're like, "No." And then we had to rewind it to watch it again.
Yeah, he says
Ugh.
it, and this is a word that George Lucas had specifically put into Episode 4, A New Hope. That Greedo it now says before all the fighting. I know handshot first, but before that whole sequence happens, only on Disney Plus and on the 4K version, do you get George Lucas's final contribution to the reimagining, McClunky. As well, it is said in The Phantom Menace by Sabubla, the evil pod racer guy. And we do get- Sebulba, that's it. And we do get the actual translation that basically means it will be the end of you.
Thanks, George. You did
Yeah.
it again.
So we get Fennec Shan basically clearing away a bunch of people, and then Boba Fett comes down. Bib Fortuna kind of visibly gives a sigh of relief, like, "Hey,
Boba!"
dead." And Boba could have turned around and said, "I thought you were dead too because you were on that barge and it blew up." But this is Star Wars, so basically Boba takes him out, sits on the throne. Fennec goes and grabs a thing of spotchka and swigs it. Even in the background, there was a dancer that was in the re-releases from 1999. She was actually there.
Yep.
I
Wow.
like the little sequence where they let the one chain dancer go, like
Yep.
Fennec Shan shoots the chain and lets her go. And then we get the break where it says the Book of Boba Fett coming next Christmas.
And Boba takes the Hut throne.
Yeah, he takes the Hut throne. So that's going to be, and now we do have internet things that have happened that have been deleted since then, but somebody at Lucasfilm, not one of the main people, but I think somebody previously employed at Lucasfilm, said last night that the Book of Boba Fett is going to be its own limited run series. So they were speculating 3 to 4 episodes, or that is the speculation. And Mandalorian season 3 will start shooting after they complete shooting the Book of Boba Fett. So what are our thoughts on where this ends and where we see things going forward for the Mandalorian?
I mean, I think that I think we've already hit the general sense of it, which is that we're ending, this ends up with, how do I come up with this? This ends up with their first big event, probably having to do with Mandalore. Right? Like, I think that's what we all have kind of been like, yep, that's
Yeah.
where we're going.
Yeah. It's more so I had to do this so the audience knows exactly where we're at with this story.
Yeah. I hate it. I this might make me some enemies here. I hope not, but if it happens, it happens. I think Boba Fett is the most boring, uninteresting character. People liked him because he was a cool suit of armor before he was tossed into a hole. Like, there's no, like, I don't care. Like, I understand it was cool to see the actor from the prequels like suit up in the armor. I get it. It's cool, and he was an interesting enough sidekick. Like, for the back half of this season, I have so little interest in a Boba Fett show or movie, and I've always had no interest in it. Like, I just don't care. And Boba the Hutt, I super don't care.
Boba the Hutt.
Especially with, like, what's his goal? What is he doing here?
Yeah, what oh no, like he's just it's Space Sopranos now.
Yeah.
It's just him running a criminal organization. Like, that sounds terrible. I don't
And
want
Why?
And I think it's going to be a big fight between the Fets and Crimson Tide at this point.
Yeah.
What's left of
God,
it.
I mean,
If anything, it's going to set up for the major other gang, and that's Crimson. It's just going to be, there's going to be something happening in that. Or there's going to be a whole bunch of, like, sand people that are put into positions of power across Tatooine, because my assumption is that's why Boba looks the way he does, is that he's been hanging with the Sand People, right?
Yeah.
The Tusken Raiders are his family, and like maybe he
Yes.
liberates them from
In
the
his
obscurity and in his muumuu. Yeah.
Yeah. This
I-
also
I-
opens up the possibility of Timothy Oliphant's character coming back.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
could see Timothy Olyphant showing up in Rangers of the New Republic as well.
Yeah, that too.
I will
could
say
see that for sure.
the one way this Boba Fett, like the Boba Fett thing, if it's about like sort of space mafia, bring back Darth Maul, then I'll be in.
That's yeah.
Because Maul went so hard. Like watching Solo in theaters the first time at a press screening, it became so obvious how little exposure to the animated shows people had. They're like, wait, he's alive? Like, and it left so much interesting territory to be explored that like I would love to see. Like, this sounds crazy, I would be way more on board with the book of Darth Maul. So, like, I want to explore more of that story. And I know it's been explored a lot on Clone Wars and Rebels, but like if you can use a Boba Fett show to sort of show like his criminal, I guess, organization or whatever coming up against that criminal organization, like that could be interesting. That might be the way to get me in. I know Lucasfilm, you're very, very concerned with how to make me personally interested in what you're doing.
Their entire goal, really.
Absolutely. They have meetings about it daily.
Yeah.
I can
What else
see
did I
though,
do?
like honestly, I and Chris, you know, I have full respect for your opinion and take. And you're not alone in identifying some of these weaknesses in the character of Boba Fett and identifying the marketing angle that Disney or, you know, Lucasfilm have used Boba Fett for. However, Boba Fett did, I think, receive an awful lot of fan enthusiasm.
Oh yeah.
Through the Legends kind of writing and material, because that's where they took the books and the kind of the documentation that they had on Boba Fett, and they made it all happen. So the knee missiles and all the stuff that was fan service when they showed us in this episode, all those people were rewarded for a lot of reading and a lot of imagination. And I think that was a veritable goldmine for Lucasfilm through some pretty lean years, Star Wars wise. I think
for sure.
There's definitely probably a spreadsheet somewhere at Lucasfilm that say, hey, the minute we put Boba Fett on any product, sales increase this percentage.
Break
Or
in case of
viewership.
emergency.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where they're going to, again, selectively be dipping into some of the Legends material and trying to make a show as a basically proof of concept for other things that they could do in the Star Wars universe and other properties that have the same type of lure on them.
Yeah.
You know, Phasma, for example, things like that, where it ended up being a missed opportunity, and the feedback overwhelmingly from the fan base, because I know that, you know, as a big Boba Fett fan myself, in terms of being a little kid and seeing the images and the marketing and the action figure of Boba Fett, I always was like, well, how come he basically dies in a pit? You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of disappointment with how underused that was, and we see it again in the sequel trilogy with Captain with Phasma, right? Where it's like Phasma was used to sell a lot of stuff. Phasma's image was branded on a lot of stuff, and people had expectations given the actress playing her. All this stuff was built up and then not really fully realized, and there's a lot of fan disappointment that, oh, she just gets thrown down a pit. Like, you know, again, that kind of angle of it. So I think it's really an experiment by Disney to see what they can do. And I also think that it you know, once it's Monday now, right? So we should have maybe some official clarification coming out on Mando Monday from Lucasfilm about exactly all this stuff as well. It might, you know.
I'm convinced they're going to stay very quiet about it for a while. Like this, I feel like in a way this finale suffers from taking place a week after Disney's like 19-hour investor call, which I don't know about you. I don't know if you guys were watching, but wow, what a journey. Where like they just announced so many Star Wars things and like when to expect them all that like part of me wonders if they're gonna like they got a name out there, they got a date out there. And like, there's been like EW has had some thoughts. Like there've been places that have like reports. Like we've talked to a source. I wonder if they're just going to keep quiet into the new year until like all the talk from the Rogue Squadron, Obi-Wan with Hayden Christensen, like they just put so much Star Wars out there that got people's minds buzzing. Like I wonder if they like this would be anything where they could easily just like we're going to play it quiet and then. Once we start filming the Book of Boba Fett, we're just gonna like give them a gut punch, be like, "This is what it is."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think we're definitely gonna get like a sizzle teaser, probably mid next year or next fall. I think that what they do is their play right now. I'm hoping what they do is they don't need to come out with a statement per se, but it'd be great if they just produced another slide. Without Kathleen Kennedy in front of it.
Just a logo.
Just have the logo for the Book of Boba Fett, the logo for Mandalorian, all these things so we know that they're separate. Then you don't have to say anything. And you can just say, here's the completed, actualized list. We had to keep a secret. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't want to spoil anything from John and Dave. So here's what we did with the investor meeting. We announced that there's 10. We slyly slipped in 9. And when we talked about Mandalorian season 3, there was no graphic, there was no visual, there was no real, because again, I just assumed in that investor meeting, they did that because the show's ongoing right now. And they wanted to not, signal something like there's going to be a change in the Mandalorian or there's going to be this or, they wanted to leave the audience alone on that. And now I think if they do say anything, it's a distinct possibility. It remains quiet, but if they do say something, it's just going to be a graphic or something from Lucasfilm that says, set your calendars at most.
Just hoping. I
think less is more. You're right.
Yes. Especially now, like obviously there was that tweet you mentioned that said that like it's sort of it's I guess a mini series and not the Mandalorian season 3. That is something they should probably clear up sooner rather than later because the way it felt to me with them announcing that it was coming in December, they previously announced that Mandalorian season 3 was going to arrive in December. So that tells me that like the way they've positioned it officially is that this is sort of what's going to be the story of Mando season 3. Which means we're not going to find out what happened to Baby Yoda for 2 years. And that's just not. That's frustrating if that's the case. So I hope that is not the case.
Yep. There would be two ways that I see that. I agree. I'd like to see the story of Din Djarin continue on. But the show's called The Mandalorian. It doesn't say what Mandalorian it's talking about. So does Mandalorian become
that's my fear. You're playing on my greatest fear about this show.
Yeah,
you spent 2 years making me care so much about Mando, and then you're like, okay, now it's Boba Fett. Go nuts, everybody. I'm like, no, but like I've built up this incredibly one-sided relationship with this character. Where like I care about him and we've seen him grow so much over the course of the show as like the kid went from being a burden to like his son.
Yeah.
And he accepted it and he embraced it. And like now, whatever the next chapter is to bring them to the two of them back together, like I'm dying to see it. And the fact that I might have to wait 2 years for that resolution kills me. Yeah. I hope that is not the case.
Yep. That was my fear.
I know
the entire season. That was my fear with the entire storyline that, hey, you need to go train or you need to find a Jedi. So that was like, my biggest fear, and now the reality is that we're most likely going to move on from what made the show so good. It's a hell of an experiment, if anything.
No.
Lucasfilm just loves, pulling on our heartstrings and just, seeing what sticks. Because this is a huge risk. Uh, One thing I've always said about this show is that this show does a great job of pulling in, the hardcore Star Wars nerd and the casual Star Wars viewer. The people who don't read the comics, read the books, play the video games, and whatnot. And this show did a great job of amalgamating everyone. If you move away from the super casual who fell in love with Baby Yoda, then you're really alienating a huge section of your audience. So it's a risk that if they move away from the Din Djarin and Baby Yoda story.
Yeah, but at the same rate, you can't tell the same story over and over again. I
for
think
sure.
as creators and as producers and writers, they want to evolve their craft, right? They don't want to sit there and go, okay. So as Chris mentioned, like, all right, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have 8 episodes where Baby Yoda does X and Din Djarin has to do Y to save him, to, eliminate peril from
Yep.
Grogu's kind of story. I don't think that they want to do that. And I was a little bit shocked, to be honest, when this ended. The first thing that went through my mind was, is The Mandalorian over now?
Yeah.
Like,
And that's not to say
that's
that,
the
like,
story.
yeah, and that's not to say that season 3 isn't going to take place during Grogu's, spring break from training.
Oh my God, The Mandalorian season 3, Grogu's Spring Break is a great title for something, though.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, Luke comes back and he's just like, this guy farts so raunchy, I need him away from me. You know what I mean? Like, you take him.
What did you feed this kid?
Your it's like baby lizards are coming out of his butt, like frog people. It's unbelievable. And egg. I just don't know, but there is a possibility that we get the child back in some fashion. Maybe Luke just can't handle a toddler. I don't know.
We're definitely getting that. Like, honestly, with the amount of merchandise they're able to sell of this thing, there's no way Baby Yoda's ever going away. Like,
exactly.
20 years from now, like, people will remember Baby Yoda more than Luke Skywalker. I guarantee it. Because it's cute, so we can make another toy and another T-shirt of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember, he eats eggs, and it's adorable, and like the toys.
He steals cookies from children like a real scumbag. Remember, it's so cute.
Throughout this Mandalorian couple seasons, I just felt so bad for the actor who played Jar Jar Binks.
Oh my God.
Like, they
You're not
tried
wrong.
to build up Jar Jar as this funny, go happy sidekick character, and people wish death upon him.
You know what? Yeah. I think Jar Jar's fine. It's just,
we all have the luxury of seeing Star Wars for what it is, but at the time, the reaction was harsh. And this time they downplayed. They didn't leak Baby Yoda. They didn't do anything with it. They were so woefully unprepared last year for the crush that people had for wanting products with them, because they wanted to keep it that secret, right? And they weren't. There was concern in Lucasfilm that it wasn't going to resonate well. But they knew the minute they brought it on set and the way that people reacted, they have a winner. Like, people identified with it, and, Werner Herzog or whatever, he would talk to it like a real thing, right? Like, here's the great thing too, everybody. Starting this Friday, which would be Christmas Day, Disney are going to air every Friday going forward an episode of Disney Gallery. Yeah. Right? And Disney Gallery is this really weird show that you don't know what the heck it's about, really, but it's the making of this season of The Mandalorian. So you're going to get a lot of breakdowns from actors, directors, producers, everybody involved in special effects, everything about how they do the stuff, the stories behind the story, right? And what their honest thoughts are about the experience. and about the actual directions of Lucasfilm. It's an absolutely enlightening and fascinating view into how the stuff gets made. And I encourage everybody who's got any interest in that type of thing. It doesn't ruin the experience. It doesn't, make you wish that you'd never watched The Mandalorian because it just spoils everything. I find that it enhances my enjoyment and whatnot. A great
Because
deal.
they did it for season 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But I believe we had to wait a lot longer after the end of season 1 to get those episodes. The fact that it's kicking in the next week, it also really it keeps us busy until WandaVision launches in a few weeks. So smart to always have that new content, guys.
Yep.
And I think they launched this Friday the new Pixar film Soul.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was supposed to be, that looks absolutely amazing, right?
Mhm.
Like it was supposed to be a theatrical release. So Disney are playing their hand really well at the momentum that The Mandalorian season 2 has gained them. It's given them this momentum, and I think they're trying to capitalize as much as they can.
I mean, they have to because now they're dealing with Wonder Woman's also out that day.
Yep,
exactly.
Starring the Mandalorian.
Exactly.
It's gonna be a really interesting day when you have that actor appearing as a main figure in 2 very different companies' projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. And let's face it though too. Aside from Mandalorian, they're finally coming to market with WandaVision. They're finally coming to market with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. These things were all promised to us much earlier.
Mhm.
At least that was my impression as a early adopter of Disney Plus. It was like, well, we've got all this content, and then really it's mostly just back content. It's mostly just The Simpsons. There's not all that much original stuff, and the stuff that's there may be good, but it's all very limited run in comparison to other shows, right? Like,
right,
episodes of something is tough when you've got 22 episodes of something else sometimes, or
right.
I mean, 10 or 15 hour long versus the truncated Mandalorian, especially season 1, where it's like fitting into sub-hour bits, right?
Yeah, well, and Disney Plus, I feel like benefited from the fact that it launched ahead of the pandemic enough to where they had some stuff in the can. Obviously, they had, I think Mando season 2 was wrapped by the time production shut down, and they were already starting work on season 3. Which, if it's the Book of Boba Fett, but there weirdly is a lot of original content. I feel like so much of it flies below the radar because it's also aimed at different audiences. Like they have the High School Musical, the musical, the series, I think it's called. Which that's great because that targets a different audience. Then there's theme park nerds like me who if you guys haven't watched the Imagineering story, which I think is a 6 or 7 part docuseries, it's an incredible look. And also, if you like Star Wars, there's a whole episode about Galaxy's Edge at the 2 United States parks. It's really incredible. So I appreciate what Disney Plus has done in terms of trying to reach out to different types of sort of Disney fans, but what they haven't done is had that Main Street breakout hit that's not about the Mandalorian. So finally we're getting to I think we were supposed to get WandaVision earlier this year.
January 15th, I believe it starts.
But originally I think it was this fall.
Originally I think it was supposed to be leading into Mando season 2, I want to say. But that was also in a world where Black Widow would be out and we would be gearing up for Eternals and everything's gotten so scrambled that I get why it was all delayed, but it's exciting to me that we're finally getting to a point where they're, especially now that they're also teeing up 10 more Star Wars shows that are all mostly about things I'm curious to see. It's exciting that we're finally now, after the year this has been, getting to the point where oh man, I can't wait to see what these people are going to do next.
Yeah, and the great thing about Star Wars for me, I'm excited to see Disney. You're right. excel at other Marvel properties and whatnot, because that's all really appealing to me too. And I feel this way about Marvel and Star Wars. Even if it's bad, it's like pizza. It's still good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're going to be able to form an opinion about it. You're going to be able to have discussions online. You're going to be able to have discussions on your podcast about what worked, what didn't work. And there's going to be some value in it, no matter what.
Mhm.
Because then you can have that conversation of, well, since this happened, just like what we talked about, well, Sabine Wren just gave Bo-Katan the Darksaber in Rebels, which was a convenience for the storytelling end of things, but now it's betrayed on live action, and we have to reconcile that. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting because all these choices in the moment, you don't really realize the repercussions per se, and then we get to, capitalize on that. But that all being said, I think that closes up our season of The Mandalorian. I want to thank all of our listeners. I want to thank Chris
Hey,
for
thank you.
taking time today to be with us. And I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in each week, because it means a lot to us. And we're going to have some new shows going forward. So the show will still exist. It's just not going to be about Mandalorian for a while, I don't think. But we are going to probably have a wrap-up episode at some point too, where maybe we have some fun with some further discussion about the post-season 2 breakdown. So, Chris, how about you tell everybody what's going on again, where they can find you on the internet, where they can find some of your podcasts and writings for, your 9-to-5 job.
Oh yeah, well you can find me writing about all kinds of movies and TV. Right now, I don't know if you guys watch Cobra Kai. I've got so much Cobra Kai footage I need to get ready because like spoilers for Mando Monday, I've seen season 3.
Ooh, nice. Gotta love
Good times. Yeah, you can find it all over at GameSpot.com. Wrestle Buddies, the wrestling podcast I do with Matt Elfring. New episodes are out every single Thursday on all of the various podcasting platforms and apps and wherever they shoot those things. And then I am at Chris Hayner. Twitter and Instagram are pretty much the ones.
Yeah.
If you want to see, if you really want to see pictures of like what I'm doing during quarantine, which is playing video games and being really bored in my apartment, hit me up on Instagram.
Great. Boris, you have any final thoughts on anything, you guys?
I have a lot of final thoughts about a lot, but in relation to Mando Monday, I think we left it off at a very good place. I think it's safe to say that we're all interested, we're all invested in the Star Wars universe, and I'm actually super excited to see what's to come. Having said that, Phil, thank you for hosting for the past 8 weeks. It's been fun not being the host for something at once, and yeah, it's been you see, it's always good when I don't have to do all the prep. So that's thank you for that. But honestly, you've done a great job.
You ruined Saturday nights for me.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's why I show up hammered half the time to these shows. But yeah, no. So thanks a lot. Honestly, it means a lot. And Chris, thank you for joining, and thanks to all of our guests for the past several weeks. We'll do call-outs and whatnot to thank everyone individually, but I just want to thank everyone collectively right now. It really means a lot. The fact that we were able to fill 8 episodes, 8 different guests, at least 8 different guests, was quite the feat. And it was always fun, trying to see who would work when. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So having said that, Phil, how about you let our listeners know where they can get a hold of us?
Of course. Well, you can find us on the internet at www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can track us down on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. You can subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really anywhere you find podcasts. I think we're on iHeartRadio and TuneIn now. So anywhere you find it, to find your podcast, you're going to find us. And thank you so much. Please subscribe, leave a rate and review for us. We really appreciate everybody giving us the time to be in their heads.
Yeah. No, it means a lot, and as always, it's been a lot of fun chatting all things Mandalorian. And as Phil mentioned, we will be coming back we have a few options in terms of shows, and I'm sure that we're going to be continuing this. So on behalf of Chris, Tyler, and Phil, I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you. Good night.